It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Andrya Bailey. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Hi, fine. How are you?
Oh, doing well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for having me. That's great. I'm excited.
Oh, well, I'm excited to have you here. So you've got a book out called Olympian Heartbreak, right? That's your latest book?
That's actually the second book in the trilogy. So I have a trilogy called The Olympian Love, and this one that you have there is the second book in the trilogy.
Oh, I see. Okay, but it's the latest release for you?
No, I already released the third book in the series last year, so the trilogy is complete right now.
Oh, okay. How come we're promoting book 2 then? Is there some reason for that?
No, I think, my publisher and the publicist with Creative Edge, they are going in order, like doing 1, 2, and 3. So right now they are doing 2, and then, in a couple of months they're going to do 3. But, all the 3 of them are already out.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Sorry for the confusion. I just wanted to figure out why we were doing 2. I thought maybe there was another reason other than that.
No, I can do all of them.
Okay. Well, we'll just talk about the series generally then. So it's a trilogy, which means 3 books. Olympian Love. Looking at the cover, I'm assuming this takes place in Greece, right?
Yes. Book 2 and 3 take place in Greece mostly. Book 1 kind of introduces Greece because the male character is Greek.
Okay. Are you from Greece?
No, I'm actually from Brazil.
Oh, you're from Brazil. Okay. All right.
Yes. You can tell an accent, right?
Well, I could hear a accent or an accent, but I couldn't figure out where. So I wasn't sure. Maybe you were Greek. Okay. All right. But you live in Canada now, is that correct?
No, I live in Houston, Texas, in the United States.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't you give us a little bit of just a synopsis of the trilogy, just the general overview, and then we'll talk a little bit about you, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. So the trilogy is a romance, and it's about student doing a master's program, and she loves Greek mythology, everything related to history and Greece. And as she gets an internship in the museum, she meets this curator and archaeologist from Greece that came into the city where she lives to do some teaching and to accompany like a special exhibit from pieces of the museum that he curates in Greece. So it's love at first sight. And so book 1 basically introduces the characters. It starts with their flirting and getting excited about each other. And then, of course, like when you do a trilogy and you do a romance, you have to have a lot of conflict to interrupt their romance. And that's what happens in book 1. We have a cliffhanger, go to book 2. She has the opportunity of going to Greece, and then there's a lot of history and Greek mythology included in it. And in book 3, the same thing happens. She comes back to the United States and goes back to Greece, and they reunite. So there's a lot of different characters too, but basically it's that's it. That's the romance, and there's a lot of history and mythology about Greece in it as well.
And then book 3 kind of wraps it up, right?
Yes, book 3 is the last one, so that's, as I don't know if you're familiar with the way that romance goes, but you have to have a pretty much happy ending, so that's the final book, and you see, how their romance kind of comes to a closing.
Oh, well, that's interesting. No, I actually didn't know that. So in a romantic series, the book has to have a happy ending? Is that the publishers require that? Like nobody can die at the end?
No, well, you can kill somebody, but not the main character.
Not the main characters.
If that couple is the main, couple that's supposed to be together, you cannot. If you're going to kill one of them, then it's not going to be considered a romance. It's not going to be tagged as romance. It can be like women's fiction or something else, but the genre romance, as per the guidelines also of Romance Writers of America and all, has to have like some kind of happy ending. They need to be together, either temporary or, final happy ever after, as we call HEA.
Okay. Now, this is adult. I mean, I'm trying to get an idea of, I'm not a big romance novel reader, but in terms of, I don't know, I guess the heat content, how do you categorize that? I mean, with movies, they have ratings, G and PG and R and X. How would you classify your series?
We would put that in the steamy category, so it's 18 and up, because there will be some steamy scenes and sex scenes that is not appropriate for children. Okay,
so if you were going to equate it to a movie, it'd be like an R-rated movie?
Well, yeah, if they're going to be very specific. If not, if they're going to cut some of the scenes of the steaminess, they could go to PG-13, but it depends on how, graphic they would want to go.
Oh, okay, I see. So how long have you been writing?
I've been published since 2012, but I've been writing for a long time. Since I was a child, teenager, I always wanted to be a writer. I used to write lots of poems and short stories and, other novels, and I never had the opportunity to be published as a novelist until 12, and from then on I started and being published. I also have another profile that's not a romance writer, so I do have other books and short stories that have nothing to do with romance, but I have a pen name for that as well, because you don't want to mix genres and have like your reader that loves romance pick up something else thinking it's the same thing, and then your character dies. So they'll be very upset with that.
Well, that's probably smart. So do you do anything else, or are you making a living at being a writer?
No, I do have like a day job, office job, Monday to Friday pretty much.
What was it about this particular series? Was there anything that inspired it? Is this a true life? I mean, was this your life, or is it totally just out of your imagination?
Maybe half and half.
Okay.
Okay. So the Greek thing, it is something that I really enjoy a lot. I've been to Greece a couple of times. I do study Greek. I try, because it's a very complex and difficult language, but I'm very fascinated by it. So I have classes like weekly, and I since I was a child, I've always been interested in Greek mythology, the gods, and all that. So I just had I was looking at the museum one day, and then I had this idea of a romance with including like a curator or an archaeologist or something, and then I actually wrote a scene several years ago. There was a contest for Harlequin, and they wanted like some kind of steamy scene, and I hadn't written romance before, but I saw that contest, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and write a scene and see how it goes. But I was not writing professionally. It was just like a spur of the moment thing, because of that idea that I had. And I wrote that scene. It was basically a chapter, if I can remember correctly, and several years ago. And then I sent it over. And they didn't pick it. There was like other professional people that sending things that were probably much more interesting than mine at the time. But they returned it to me. They returned the manuscript to me, and I had it in a drawer. I had it, saved it somewhere. I didn't even think I had it anymore until one day I was chatting with some other author friends of mine, and we were talking about romance, and they say, like, why don't you write a romance? Because, you have, like, some good ideas, and it may be something interesting. So I thought about that, like, I had something already that I started, but I never wrote a book about it. It was like a chapter, a scene, something. So I looked for it, found it, and had to edit a lot of things because, the original idea was from a long time ago, but I had, like, other ideas to build from that. And I sent this to my two friends that we were talking about, and they're like, oh, yeah, that looks very, very good. If you can probably build a whole story around this scene and get these characters up and going. And so that's how basically it started. And I wrote the first book, and then, I'm a pantser. I don't plan too much. I have an idea, and I start writing, and then from whatever I start writing, and if I need to do some research, because, I think, I'm going to put some reference to a Greek god, and then I go search for something, and then I find something else, and I keep building on it until, the ending. So that's pretty much how it came about.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So when you write, when you process, do you actually do it every day? I mean, do you sit down at a specific time and approach it like a job, or do you just write when the mood strikes?
Well, it depends, because if I am on a deadline, like for the trilogy, or if I have some specific that I need, I'll try to be, writing every day. My favorite time is usually at night because it's quiet and I can put some music to get on the mood depending on what. I mean, for example, for this trilogy, I was listening to a lot of Greek music, to put me like in
that works. Yeah.
In Greece, so I could feel like I was in Greece, and then I experienced a couple of things when I was in Greece that I actually put in the books, So all the parts of Greece that are things that I actually were able to see and experience and feel and smell and all. So I try to put a lot of those senses, in the story, so my readers can have a feeling of where they are, and I've had some good compliments about that before. Some people actually have reviewed and said, oh, Greece seems like a character of its own because you make it so vivid and so, come alive, the way that I was trying to describe, which is what my purpose was anyway. So I do have, some preferred times that it's going to be at night, but I don't write every day because sometimes if I'm writing a book, I'll try to write every day. If I'm not in a book, I will try to write sometimes shorter things, like a short story. Sometimes a poem will come to mind, and I'll just pen it, and then I'll just save a bunch of things, and then I go back and review them, and whenever I feel like I can submit for a journal or something like that.
So this series, you said earlier that it's already out. When did the series release originally?
Well, the first book came out in 16, I think, or 17.
Okay.
Can't remember. But the last one was, the last book, the Olympian Love, the last book was released last year.
Okay.
Now, they are also being translated. The third book actually was just published in Spanish. So the whole trilogy is also out in Spanish. And the second book was just published in Greece, in Greek, of course. So the third one is being translated right now. So the trilogy is going to be available, it's already available in English and Spanish, complete, and it's going to be available in Greek also, complete, probably by the end of the year or beginning of next year.
Okay. You said you were originally from Brazil?
Yeah.
When you write, do you write in English or Portuguese?
In English.
Okay. I was just curious. Do you think in English?
To write, yes.
All right. Okay. So, I mean, you do.
But sometimes I think in Portuguese, if I'm talking to people, it depends. I've been here for a long time, even though I cannot get rid of my accent, but it's just like, for the writing, I'm so used to write in English, because of work and because of being here for a long time, and I read a lot of books in English. You know, when I go to Brazil, I buy some books in Portuguese too to keep up with the updates of the language, because languages are always changing.
Yeah, they're always adding new words.
There's always development in language. And Portuguese, the problem with Portuguese is because I haven't been in Brazil for a long time. And a couple of years ago, some grammar and not necessarily grammar, but some vocabulary changed. You know, the way that we have accents in some words, they don't have those anymore. English doesn't have that, but so I wouldn't even know how to spell some words anymore because they are different right now, and I'm not up to date with the new Portuguese vocabulary. But and it's harder to translate because some people say like, well, you have the book in English, you have the translation to Spanish, you're doing the versions for Greek, but there is no Portuguese. And I do have a lot of people in Brazil and that I know and friends. And I said, well, it's the hardest thing to find a good translator for Portuguese. And then they said, well, you can do it. I said, yeah, I could do it, but it's not recommended for several reasons. One of which is if I start like translating my own books, that would be a waste of my time because I'm rewriting the same book. So instead of like working on a new book, and then second, I know the language too, so I would probably do a lot of changes to the for myself because I'm rewriting the book technically, So
right.
I would rather have a translator do it, and then I can read and see if it makes sense to the original story.
Yeah, you could go on forever. That could be like an Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole. You just
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we do need to wind this down. Thank you for coming on the show. Do you have a website you want to give out?
Yes, I have. It's www.AndryaBailey.com.
Okay.
And my books are also available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and everywhere that books are sold.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you, nice talking to you, and best of luck with the book series.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me, and it was fun talking to you.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to The Douglas Coleman Show, Gary Wietgrefe. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Doing good, Douglas.
Thank you for coming on the show. As we were just talking about before we got on, you were on the video edition, the VE show, about a year and a half ago. And you're back now on the audio podcast, and we're going to kind of focus in on one of your books called Relating to Ancient Culture. And this is very small print because I'm looking at the thumbnail.
Okay.
So the subtitle
the
is...
subtitle and the marketing title is Culture and the Mysterious Age and Changing It. So
okay.
My series is relating to ancients, but this book on culture is of course another nonfiction of mine, but it's written as a mystery. So each chapter, 20 to 22 chapters, start as a riddle, and as you go through the book, you try to figure out the riddles.
So when you're saying relating to ancient culture, are you referring to us presumably as modern culture, relating to people who lived a long time ago?
You could say that. Obviously, I wrote it from personal experiences, so as I've traveled around the world and raised on a South Dakota farm, I have, obviously we each have our experiences with our own culture, but I like history, and so I use examples, back to Homer and the Trojan War, or, Aladdin, and my grandfather was born in 1891, so I use that kind of as the start between ancient and modern, because there wasn't widespread immunizations, there wasn't modern transportation, certainly not airplanes, and a lot of the things that we take for granted, like radio and television and cell phones and all that kind of thing. So he was born in an era before all of these modern, I'll call it 20th century changes.
Well, I would agree with you. I would also argue that the Internet was the start of a new one, and anybody pre-Internet would be ancient, at least in the eyes of the under 30s.
Certainly, that is a yes. I would have to agree that I think one place in the book I said something about teenagers, can come into a room and then they leave because they don't want to talk with the ancients.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true, but that's sort of always been going on. I mean, you could go back to the 1950s with that. But the idea is that there is a certain mindset of people that grew up, that were born with a swipe pad in their hand. I've seen it. And people like my age, I'm going to be 60 this year. I got the Internet for the first time. I was already in my 30s. So half of my life so far has been with some form of a computer. We started with the very basic one. I think it was Windows. I forget what it was at that point. Was it Windows 3.1, maybe?
I can remember, I think it was a 286
processor.
The first laptop I had. And, and it had less memory than probably 3 photos or a short video takes now.
Yeah, and I remember it was like 3 color graphics or something, and now it's 3 billion color graphics. I mean, it's unbelievable. But
every time you got a email, you got a little ding on your computer that you had an email coming in.
Yeah, it's true. And then there was a break, and then now it seems to me that the phone has kind of replaced the computer for a lot of people, at least in terms of the daily routine. There's still some things that you can't do on a computer. I mean, on a phone. Like with me, with all the video editing and the audio that I do, there's no way I'm going to do that on a phone. So
in spreadsheets and things like that. It's absolutely right.
It's impossible. But
one of the things is you're going down that line to think about, especially on phones. We've with texting and social media and things like that, we've broken our memory down to snippets, meaning our phones, in effect, have planted in our minds how we react almost immediately to real short segments rather than in-depth thought. And so, for example, we just got back from Mexico, and I cannot call my wife in Mexico. I mean, she can be, downtown, and I try to call her, dialing her number, because I don't want to forget her phone number. But the only way this phone works is if I go into contacts and hit dial, and it'll dial straight in, and I can talk to her in the next second. So the phone is replacing our memory in many ways.
Well, that could be one reason why people's attention spans have been getting progressively shorter and shorter, because people are starting to become adapted to the way the phone thinks. It sounds silly, but I think there is some truth to that, worth investigating, because I've noticed that attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and we have sort of created our video show with that in mind, and we keep the video segments to 15 minutes because we found that was sort of the sweet spot. If we do a 1 hour video, people will tune out after 15 minutes. You can see it right in the analytics.
I 100% agree. One of the examples I use in the book is Homer. I'm not sure if everybody in your audience would remember the Iliad and the Odyssey books by Homer, but they were written around 600 or 700 BC about the Trojan War. Well, when I was in Turkey, I went to the ancient town of Troy, which wasn't discovered until 40 years ago or so, ancient town of Troy, but the Trojan War occurred in, I think it was 1184 BC, so hundreds of years before Homer. So it wasn't written down until Homer about this war and the books that are written about it. And so I just can't imagine somebody remembering things that a war that happened today, carrying that on several hundred years and then writing it down and trying to explain it.
Yeah, that is amazing. And you have to wonder how much of it is as accurate as it probably was. Because you would think it was passed on from generation to generation, right? The stories would have to be.
It was, certainly biblical stories. There has been, for 2,000 years, they've been trying to document, is parts of the Bible real or whatever. But I'll use another example. In 1882, this is in the book, 1882, Aladdin was written down by a French guy, the story of Aladdin. And then it wasn't until 20 years, 30 years ago that Disney made a movie about Aladdin. But that story was carried on perhaps 1,000 years or more about a young boy that grew up in a city in China, and he was a son of a poor tailor, and the kid just ran the streets and was basically useless. And so it's an interesting story, but again, one carried on through history from memory.
Yeah. So in your book, is this what it's about? If I was to pick it up, you're going to have different chapters of different anecdotes like that, different stories?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And so are you making any sort of comparison between those particular stories and now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, in the introduction, the first or second sentence in my book is survival is in jeopardy when memory books and clouds disappear. Well, we know hardcover books are and paperbacks are kind of going by the wayside in favor of ebooks. And we just talked about snippets and how our memory is more short-term. And we know, what is it, December, something like that, the Amazon cloud got jammed up, and businesses, airlines, and different things shut down until the cloud got up running again. So my point is, when memory books and clouds disappear, culture survival is in jeopardy because we can't function.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. And then there's always the risk of a major cyber attack, right? Which has been talked about, and with the ongoing war in Ukraine, the Russians seem to be...
It's always a possibility, even a sunspot.
Yeah.
As in military intelligence and communications was sometimes affected by severe sunspots. And people don't think about that, but an explosion in the sun can wreak havoc with our satellite and our cell phone communications here on the ground.
So what do we do? Do we hide gold in the mattress and hunt for our own food? How?
You can't eat gold. You can't eat gold.
You can't eat gold.
I treat these subjects as a positive. Yes, culture is changing, but you can't hide your head in the sand and stock the closet and think you're going to survive that way. Society doesn't ever survive that way. Short term you can get by for a weekend on popcorn or whatever. But no, I address lots of different topics, and I relate to ancient stories. For I guess maybe 30 years or so, every book I read I would do 1 or 2 or 3 pages of notes, and sometimes I'd write down a quote. So as I'm going through and writing this book, these old history books, a lot of them from the 1800s, I pull out examples of a story then compared to how we would write the story now. And so I cover topics about race and how standards have changed and things like that.
Okay. I'm not all that convinced that we have changed that much as a human race. Technology certainly has changed, and technology is the template to how we live our lives. But in terms of
it's true,
the battle versus good and evil, I think still rages on as it has been since the beginning of time. And I don't think we've improved on it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But just an example, I just looking down here at my notes, one of the quotes that I use in the book is, "Never in human history have so many lived so long off the efforts of so few." Now, never in human history have so many lived so long off the efforts of so few. We've kind of blocked children from working both labor laws and things like that. We've extended school. As seniors, some people approach their late 50s, as you just said, 60s, and you're thinking about retirement, where if you live that long throughout history, you know, if you were a lady, you probably took care of the grandchildren or hoed the garden if you were a Native American, or if you were a Native American guy when you're too old for, we'll say, warfare or hunting, you raise tobacco. And so there's really, through technology and some of the cultural changes that we set for expectations, at least in Western culture, we've shortened the span of who's actually supporting society.
Okay, yeah. And it's getting to the point where actually the machines are supporting society, which takes us into a whole other realm. That's like Terminator, The Matrix.
Yeah, in fact, people can go to my website, relatingtoancients.com, and one of the topics on there is artificial memory and how artificial memory has changed our society. It's a little like a 10-minute, as you said, a short one, 10-minute, 11-minute audio clip.
You had mentioned something about an award before we got on.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had submitted my book, Culture and the Mysterious Age and Changing It, and a couple other of my recent books the last 3 years to the Global Book Awards. And the spring edition, the Global Awards, are for self-published authors, which I'm self-published. And this Culture and the Mysterious Age of Changing It took bronze, or third place. And my book, Where I Bike to North Pole, Alaska, took second, silver. Oh, great. And now, is that is the criteria simply book sales, or what was... That's a good question. There's lots of different kinds of awards. But the Global Book Award for self-publishing obviously screens, one, self-publishing. Number two is the appearance of the book and I'll call it the topics of the book. They're probably broken their categories. I looked through the website. There must be about 30, 40 different categories, and of course hundreds of books submitted in each category. And so obviously my bicycle book is a travel adventure, where culture is fits a completely different category, and one on learning fits education and reference category. Oh, I see. Okay, but what is the actual criteria that they're judging? Is it you said it was the book cover? I'm just looking at the line. Writing creativity, the way the books are marketed, how you attract readers. Okay. All right. It's the whole package. Things like that. All right. Yes. The whole package relating to self-published. Okay, I get it. All right. Yes. Oh, well, great. Well, congratulations. That's good. Did you get a big check from them, or just a pat on the back and a little plaque to put up on your wall? Yeah, your awards on things like this are in this case a bronze seal of that, and I can download the logo. Ah, well, okay. No, there's more people, I think, writing, and libraries are taking more audiobooks, more videos are showing up in there. That's where a lot of the budgets are going. And so the marketing of books, as you probably fully realize, is changing.
Oh, certainly. Well, with self-publishing, it's kind of blown the doors wide open.
Right.
Anyone can publish a book, and it has.
Yeah, and there's certainly quality out there, and there's certainly
crap out there as well.
You don't want to waste your time reading.
Well, that's the good and the bad. I mean, there's a line that I use. I actually wrote a book myself, although it was very short, and the line I used was, the good news is that now everyone can do it, and the bad news is now everyone can do it. So, and it's true. Okay. And that doesn't just apply to, I was talking about podcasting, but it applies to all of the media, to music, to book writing, to filmmaking, all of it, because it's been made so easy for everyone to do, relatively easy, some easier than others. I mean, with a podcast, you need basically no skills. All you need is a computer and a microphone and the ability to speak. With writing, all you basically need is a keyboard, and
because most people can't use a pencil and
nobody's writing on a tablet anymore. It's all,
they can't even read their own writing. In my case, my first two books, I published 7 of them. My first 2 books back in the late '80s were handwritten on yellow notepad. And I hired a lady to type it. And believe it or not, my writing must have been good enough they could read it so that I could proof it and put it into book form. But lots have changed.
I always got a kick out of that back in the day when they would ask you, how many words a minute can you type? I don't think anybody asks that question anymore. I think it's irrelevant.
It's almost irrelevant, and I address that topic in my book, Learning, where how typewriter came about and how the keyboard was designed based on keeping the keys from slapping each other and locking in place. When I'm older than you, so when I was in the service, I learned, and of course, depending on where you're at, I transcribed Morse code on a typewriter, and so the typewriters are manual. Well, shoot, back then we at least learned how to type on a manual typewriter. And so, I got up to 52 words a minute, but it's interesting. You listen to the code, translate it into a letter, and type it with your finger. And in 52 words a minute, and being accurate is not necessarily that easy.
Is Morse code even used anymore by the Navy?
Well, I wasn't in the Navy. I'm not sure. It is. Yes, it is. On shortwave radio operators and others do still use Morse code. There are SOS signals and other things that are international standards, and that you don't necessarily have to do it electronically. You can use it with mirrors. You can use it with sounds.
Right, with mirrors.
And so there's different ways of signaling SOS. If you're trapped in a building and you can pound on a pipe or something. So.
Yeah, okay. No, when you said that, I just remembered those on-ship, those flashy, they look like spotlights, except they're just mirrors that they aim towards the sun.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, I think on that, we're going to wind this down. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes, relatingtoancients.com.
Relating to Ancients.
The title of my series of books, relatingtoancients.com.
Okay, great. And you said the book has been out for a couple of years now, right?
Yes. Yep.
And people, if they're interested in the book, can come to the website and purchase through there.
They can come to my website. Of course, the ebooks are on standard online retailers like Amazon and others, and my New York distributor, bookch.com, has it. And so most people come to the website like on an interview like this because they want an autographed copy, but they can get it on ebooks on Amazon or something like that too.
Okay. All right, Gary. Well, it was nice talking to you again, and best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thanks a lot, Douglas. I appreciate it.